What's good, everybody? Welcome back to Elite Madness, and in this video I'm going to be doing another computer build in my lab. The last build that we did on the channel was a 4090 i9 build. It was an absolute monstrosity of a supercomputer. It was a lot of fun to build. This time we'll be doing a budget computer build, and by budget I mean completely unaffordable in every way. So I had instructed the customer to buy each part individually over time as she found good deals or as good components became available. I personally feel like this is the best way to build a computer if you don't have the money to just drop it all in one big build. Don't try and rush, take your time, slowly find all the best parts for your build. So we're going to unbox and review all these components that we bought. Now the total value of this PC is estimated to be about $1,300. However, this customer is a Twitch streamer who is able to get donations from her community towards her streaming PC. I designed the basic blueprint for this build in my lab, the core components being Ryzen and NVIDIA. In my opinion, I believe these are the best components to use for a streaming/gaming rig, which I advise the customer to purchase. Doing this build was a lot of fun, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this speed run of us unboxing each component individually and putting the PC together. We did it pretty quickly and efficiently, and I was able to get the computer running on the first try to Windows with an overclock DOCP profile. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoy. Once Yagi had collected all of the necessary parts for us to assemble it in my lab, we got to work, starting with the computer case. This computer case is a Corsair iQ 4000 RGB case, pretty popular amongst a lot of gamers. The case was perfectly snug and secure in the packaging. I had no worries that this case was damaged. And it's a pretty high quality case, all things considered. Check out the back. And I mean, just look at this premium tempered glass. I mean, it's really nice. Next up, we have the EVGA Supernova 750 GT Gold power supply. Pretty standard packaging, all the cords. Then we got the ASRock AMD motherboard. This is a perfect budget motherboard for AMD and DDR4 RAM. It looks amazing, and not only that, it has everything you need simplistically for your PC build at a budget price. Alright, so let's start assembling. First thing we're going to do is put the motherboard in the PC case. Screw it in tightly and secure. Next up, we're going to take off the back. Let's start with the power supply connections. Now, you definitely do not need to use all of these connections, but just to show you that we have all the cords that were supposed to come with the power supply and that they all connect to the power supply correctly. Alright, the first step, we're going to connect the computer case to the motherboard so the computer case has power from the power supply. This being one of the most complicated steps because of the tiny little cables that have to be perfectly plugged in. Next up, we're going to connect the power supply to the motherboard. We're going to have 3 cords to plug in here: the main power supply, the CPU, and the GPU power cord. Now that the power supply is completely hooked up to the motherboard, let's install it to the PC tower. Next up, we got the Ryzen 7 5700X 8-core 16-thread CPU. Packaged properly and all of the pins in perfect condition. Pretty easy to install. Just line up the arrows and insert. Lock it in place. Let's move on. Now we're gonna install the Samsung 970 EVO Plus 1TB SSD. This just plugs right in here. Just push it in a little hard and then screw it in. One of the more challenging steps will be installing the heatsink. The NTXT TI20 CPU air cooler. Pretty good basic startup. This can be upgraded later. It's a very good budget heatsink. First thing you gotta do is make sure you put thermal paste evenly on the CPU. Here in the lab, I have a card that you can use to spread it. Once that is completed, we're gonna take out the stock mounts. Alright, now to install the heatsink with custom mounts. You need to make sure that you don't screw in each screw the entire way until all of them are in, to make sure the motherboard doesn't crack. The fan was a clip-on, which was pretty nice. I didn't have to screw it in. Now plug this into the CPU fan. It's always very exciting to check out your new RAM and install it. These are Corsair Vengeance Pros, 32 gigabytes. They always look so aesthetic. I'm always pleased with Corsair RAM. It looks great, and when it plugs in, the RGBs just look so clean. Alright, now we're gonna do the T-Force Vulcan 2TB SATA SSD. This is a very simple setup here. Just plug it into the power supply first. And then connect it to the motherboard. I can't properly unbox this GPU because my customer had it gifted from her community. However, it is a used Asus TUF 1660 Ti 6GB. Very nice for your first build, and can always be upgraded later like the heatsink. TI stands for titanium, which means all the parts are just constructed with a better material. This GPU is actually very nice. It has very good ratings and good bench presses. I mean, altogether, this shit looks amazing. We added an extra fan there in the back to create a good wind tunnel. We also took extra care to make sure that our cable management was nice and clean and easily established. Sheesh. Just look at how clean this PC is. It booted right up immediately the first try. I just had to press F2 to go into the BIOS. I would also like to say that I overclocked this system from BIOS before I ever booted the Windows, and the overclock worked perfectly, just a PVO and a DOCP profile for the RAM. Booted straight to Windows, clean, first try. Beautiful rig. P.S. The motherboard only had 2 connectors for fan power, so the front fans didn't work until the customer bought a chassis in order to plug in all the fans that she has.